I thought the clapping was coming from the apartment upstairs. Then I realized it only happened when I opened the dryer door. And tonight, someone just took a bow. The dryer in the corner has been mine for 31 years. That's how I think of it. Mine. Not the laundromat. I just run the place, keep the machines fed with quarters and the occasional kick when the spin cycle sticks. The laundromat belongs to a property company downtown. But the dryer in the corner, the one with the dented panel on the left side and the lint trap that always smells of someone else's dryer sheets, that one feels like it belongs to me. I am 64. I spent 30 years before this job dressing actors on Broadway, helping them into corsets and tuxedos and monster costumes in the dark wings of stages while the audience waited out in the warm dark. I know what performance looks like. I know what applause sounds like. That swelling noise that makes a person feel, just for a moment, like the world has been watching all along. My knees gave out. The theater work dried up around the same time, which I told myself was a coincidence. I found the laundromat listing in a community paper and moved to Cincinnati. The space is a long rectangle, 12 washers on the left wall, 10 dryers on the right, a folding table down the middle, a back room with a utility sink and a cot where I sometimes sleep. One door in front, one in the back that I keep bolted. 2 windows painted over on the lower halves. At night, orange light from the parking lot across the street comes through the paint in thin lines across the floor. My routine is simple. Open at 7, close at 10. Sweep twice a day. Collect coin trays on Tuesdays and Fridays. Wipe machines down with bleach cloth. Watch people come and go. Most don't talk to me. One old man always loads exactly 4 shirts and works a crossword until the cycle finishes. A young woman with a baby comes Thursday evenings, leaves her laundry running, goes to the diner next door. Life here is quiet in a way the theater never was. I don't miss the noise. I sleep on the cot in the back more nights than I expected. I have a radio, a thermos of coffee, and the corner dryer, which hums a little lower than the others, a sound as familiar now as my own heartbeat. The first strange thing happened on a Tuesday in October. I was pulling coin trays when I heard it from the far end of the dryer row. Not a button or zipper tumbling against the drum, something else, closer to breath. In and out, soft and even. I told myself it was the ventilation duct. The building is old. Ducts make sounds. Next morning, there was a smell near the corner machine, sweet and stale, like the inside of an old theater trunk, cedar and dust and something floral sealed up for years. I leaned close. Nothing. The smell was already gone. By the end of October, the corner dryer ran hotter than the others. I'd touch the panel and pull my hand back fast. The repair technician came, ran his tests, and said it was within normal range. That night, I left the door open while I reached in to grab a forgotten sock, one white tube sock with a red stripe. I was holding it when I heard the sound from behind me. Applause. Not a crowd exactly, a small theater, maybe 60 people. Polite and brief, the way an audience claps at the end of a middle scene. It came from inside the drum. I spun around. The dryer was empty. The door was still open. I closed the door. I finished sweeping. I drove home without counting the register. The next night, I left the door open on purpose. The applause came again and lasted longer. I stood at the far end of the row and did not move until it stopped. Then came the woman with the cracked laundry basket. I'd noticed her the past few weeks. Hair always pulled back tight, basket set on the floor instead of the folding table, always loading the corner dryer and only the corner dryer. One night she was the last patron. I watched her through the small viewing pane I'd cut in the back room wall, a rectangle of glass that lets me see the floor without standing out there. She pulled her clothes from the corner dryer, folded them into the basket, and walked to the front door. Then she stopped. She looked back at the machine. "I didn't do it on purpose," she said. Not to me, to the dryer. Then she left. I stood at the viewing pane and didn't move for a long time. That week, I started double bolting the back door. I told myself it was because of a break-in story on the radio. November came cold. I started finding small things moved in the mornings. Soap bottles shifted on the shelf. The folding table pushed a foot to the left. My maintenance notebook placed on top of the corner dryer instead of under the counter. I set things back and told myself patrons did it without thinking. One morning, the notebook was open on the dryer, open to my temperature log. Someone had underlined the reading. The underline was in pencil. I don't own a pencil. I use pens. My heartbeat went strange, too fast, too deliberate. I looked around. The front door was locked from inside, the back door double bolted, the windows intact. I called the property company. They said they'd look into it. No one came. I started staying in the back room almost entirely. On the night of the 7th, I watched the corner dryer's door swing open on its own. No one was near it. The drum was empty. The machine hadn't been running, but the drum was turning. Slowly, I could see it through the porthole glass, and from inside came not applause, but its opposite, the particular silence of an audience waiting for something to begin. I pressed my back against the utility sink. My breath came out loud in the small room. 2 nights later, a man I'd never seen before loaded the corner dryer and sat on the bench. When the cycle hit its last few minutes, he stood and pressed both palms flat against the panel. When the drum stopped and he opened the door, the applause came. I heard it from the back room. And he stood there and pulled his clothes out slowly. And then he stood with a pair of jeans in his arms and said, "I hit him with my car. In 2019, I drove away." He put the jeans in his bag and left. I know what confession sounds like. After 30 years backstage, I heard actors break down in the wings, heard directors weep after bad previews, heard the private things people say out loud when they think the world isn't listening. Confession has a shape. The voice goes flat. The words come out measured, like reading from something written long ago. That man's voice had that shape. I started writing down what I heard. A woman who had kept a lie for 15 years, a lie that ended her sister's marriage. A teenager who had started a fire in an empty building and watched it go. An older man who said only, "I knew what he was doing to those kids, and I didn't tell anyone," and stood with his forehead against the machine until the room went quiet. Each one said it when the door was open at the end of a cycle. Each only once. None looked toward the back room. The applause after each one was longer, more particular. The sound of a house that has heard what it came to hear. On the 22nd, the applause didn't stop when the person left. It kept going after the door swung shut. The drum was still turning in the dark, no power, not running, and the applause grew, rolled out, and I felt suddenly that I wasn't in my laundromat but in the wings of a very old theater watching a final act complete. I went out on the floor. I don't know why, my legs just moved. I stood in front of the corner dryer. The drums slowed, the applause softened. The cedar smell was back, thick this time, and I tasted something metallic at the back of my throat, like the air before a storm. My hands were shaking and wouldn't stop. I opened the door. Inside, folded neatly, was a piece of cloth, dark velvet, the color of stage curtains. I hadn't put it there. No one had been in the laundromat for over an hour. I reached in. The fabric was warm, and as my fingers touched it, I heard, from just inside the drum, just past my reach, a breath, long and slow, satisfied. I stepped back. I went to the back room and called the police. They came. They checked the machine. No fabric, no smell, no sign of entry. One officer asked if I'd been sleeping all right. He checked the double-bolted back door and the painted windows and said these old machines made all kinds of sounds. They left. I stood alone in the empty laundromat for a long time. The corner dryer was closed and still. The orange lines from the parking lot lay across the floor. I almost convinced myself I had imagined it. Then January came. I arrived one morning to find my notebook open on the counter, turned to a blank page. 6 words in pencil, neat and centered. You heard us. Now bow. I tore the page out and threw it away. The next night, the corner dryer ran 3 full cycles on its own. I watched from the back room. No one loaded it. No one touched it. Between cycles, the applause came through the closed door, louder each time, the sound of a full house at a standing ovation. After the 3rd cycle, the door swung open, drum turning. Then someone stood up from the bench. I did not see them come in. I do not know when they sat down. Just a person, ordinary coat, ordinary posture. They walked to the corner dryer and stood before the open door and put one hand against the side of the machine. They said something I couldn't hear. The applause that came then was the loudest yet. It rolled out of that drum in a wave. The person bent slowly at the waist and held the bow for a long time. I have 3 new locks now on both doors. The painted windows are replaced with frosted glass that only I can open. I have a camera above the corner dryer and check the footage every morning. I keep my notebook in my bag, not in the laundromat. I found an old article from 1987 about a theater fire on this block. The article said the building that stands here now was built on the old stage's footprint. I have not let myself think too hard about what that means. The corner dryer is tagged out of service. I don't open it. I don't clean it. I keep the lights bright and the radio on, and I watch through the viewing pane, and I do not go out on the floor alone at night. The applause still comes, muffled through the closed door, like a crowd seated very far back but not leaving. Last night, after it faded, I heard something I had not heard before. The sound of a curtain rising. The ink was still wet, but the paper was decades old. It said the man in the red hat would die at 2 a.m. I looked up, and a man in a red hat just walked in. The laundromat smells like old soap and warm lint. That's the first thing I notice every night when I unlock the front door and push it open. The smell hits me before the lights do, flat and sudsy, the kind that never quite leaves even after closing. I'm 34. I've been doing the night shift here for about 3 weeks, ever since the plant let me go. The plant where I worked 12 years. Now I fold other people's laundry at 2 in the morning and mop floors that are always a little sticky no matter what I use. The laundromat is on a street called Birch, though there are no birch trees nearby. Just a parking lot, a dollar store that closes at 9, and a check cashing place with bars on its windows. The laundromat itself is a long, narrow room. 20 washers along the left wall, 20 dryers along the right, 2 fluorescent lights that flicker no matter how many times I've tightened the tubes. At the back, a folding counter, a utility sink, and a door marked Employees Only, leading to a storage room where I keep the mop, the bleach, and a folding chair where I eat lunch. The hours are 11 at night to 7 in the morning. Between customers, I clean machines and restock soap packets and listen to the hum. The machines make constant noise, churning, spinning, the soft thud-thud of wet jeans and a dryer. After a few nights, the sounds become wallpaper. You stop hearing them the way you stop hearing your own heartbeat. The washer I come to think of as mine is number 7, third from the door on the left. It runs slightly louder than the others, and its drum is off balance, so it thumps when it spins. I checked the inside with a flashlight my first night, ran my hand along the rubber seal. Nothing caught, just an old machine. I got used to it fast. The first strange thing happened on a Wednesday. I was wiping down the folding counter around 3 in the morning when I smelled something that didn't belong. Not soap, not lint. Something damp and older, like the inside of a basement that's been sealed a long time, like wet paper left in the dark. The laundromat was empty. The machines were off. I checked every drum, looking for something a customer had left behind wet. Nothing. The smell faded before I could find where it came from.
I wrote it off. Old buildings do strange things. The second thing happened the following Friday. A woman came in around 1:30 with a big bag of laundry. When her second load finished in washer 7, she frowned and counted through the pile twice. A gray sweater was missing. She wasn't loud about it, just confused. She checked the dryers, the floor, the drum again. Gone. I offered to check the storage room. Not there either. She left without it, shaking her head. I stood at washer 7 and put my hand along the rubber seal. Empty, clean, slightly damp. But there was that smell again, just for a second. Wet paper and old, dark air. Then nothing.
The letter was there the following Tuesday, just after 2 in the morning. I'd been clearing a stuck quarter from the coin slot on washer 7 when I lifted the lid to check the drum. There it was, a single piece of paper folded in quarters, sitting at the bottom of the tub. My first thought was that someone had washed a note in their pocket and left it. My second thought was that the machine hadn't been run in over an hour. I reached in and picked it up. Cold, damp in the specific way that stays on your fingertips. I unfolded it under the flickering light. The handwriting was old-fashioned and careful, the kind you see in old documents. The paper was yellowed at the edges, but the ink was dark. I read it 3 times. It described a man walking into a gas station 2 miles from here and taking something from the clerk. It gave the name of the street. It gave a date, 4 days from now. No name, no return address. My heart was going fast enough that I felt it in my throat. I told myself it was a story, a creative writing exercise gone through the wash by accident. I carried the letter to the storage room and set it on the shelf above the mop bucket. 4 days later, I searched the news. There was a short article. Gas station, that street. The details matched closely enough that I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time without moving. I found the second letter 8 days later. Same machine, same careful quarters, same yellowed paper, same dark ink. My hands started shaking before I'd even fully unfolded it. This one described an accident, a car running a red light 2 blocks from here, a specific night, a specific intersection, a person on a bike. The date was 6 days out. I called the city's non-emergency line that night and gave an anonymous tip about the intersection. I don't know if it mattered. I searched the news 6 days later and found nothing about the intersection. I don't know what that means. I started checking washer 7 every hour. The gray sweater came back 3 weeks into the job. I found it when I lifted the lid for my 2 o'clock check, folded in the drum, soaking wet. The machine hadn't run all night. I touched the fabric and pulled my hand back. The water was cold in a way that didn't come from a machine. A sharp smell came with it, metallic, like old pennies, like the inside of your mouth after you bite your lip. I bagged the sweater without looking at it and carried it to the storage room. Then I went back and found a third letter. My hand was shaking badly enough that I dropped it twice before I got it open. The paper was wetter than the others. The ink bled at the edges, but the handwriting was still clear. This letter was different. It described the laundromat, the front door, the row of machines, the flickering lights, the storage room. It described me, not by name, but by what I was wearing that night, including the tear at my collar. It said I had found the letters. It said I had to decide. The last line said, "The machine remembers what was put through it. Open it again or don't. Either way, the drum keeps turning." I sat on the floor with my back against the folding counter. My legs stopped working right. The light above me buzzed and stuttered. I called my sister. It was past 3. She picked up, voice thick with sleep, and stayed on the phone for 20 minutes while I sat on that floor. By the time I hung up, I had stopped shaking. The smell was gone. The storage room door was closed. I had not gone back in. I went back the next night. I had a plan. I would tell my shift manager the machine was broken. I would get it taken out. I had it all worked out on my drive in. I checked the machine at 11:15. Empty. I let out a long breath. I lasted until 1:30. The letter was there. 3 lines. It said my sister's name, the name I had said out loud on the phone the night before, in this building while I sat on the floor. It described what she had been wearing the day before, a dark coat she'd owned for years. I hadn't seen her in weeks. The description was right, and it said she was going to lose something she couldn't replace. I called her immediately, told her to be careful. She asked why. I said I'd been having bad dreams. She said she'd be fine. After I hung up, I pulled the plug from washer 7's wall socket. The readout light went dark. I stood in the sudden quiet and felt the absence of its hum, which I hadn't realized I'd been hearing all night as a separate sound underneath everything else. At 3:30, I went to check. The plug was back in the socket, the light was on, the machine was running a full cycle, the drum turning, the interior light visible through the round window. No one had come in. I had been watching the door the entire time. I sat at the folding counter and watched the machine turn. In the morning, before I left, I found one of my own socks in the drum. Just one, the left one from a pair I'd searched for and given up on 3 days ago. It was cold and damp. When I dropped it in the trash, the metallic smell rose up sharp enough that I tasted it on the back of my tongue. I work days now at a grocery store. I don't drive past Birch Street anymore. I own 3 deadbolts. I change my morning routine every week so nothing stays predictable. I sleep with a light on. I hand wash all my laundry, which takes time, but the time keeps my hands busy and my mind in the present. I looked up the laundromat's history once. There was a mention in a local archive, a fire in 1987, origin undetermined. Some equipment had survived. The article didn't say which pieces. Most nights I get through my checklist, doors, windows, the closet, under the sink, and feel something close to calm. But sometimes in my dreams, the machines in the back run their cleaning cycles, and I hear a sound through the wall, low and rhythmic, a thud, slightly off balance. I stop what I'm doing and stand still and wait for it to stop. Last night, it didn't stop when the machine stopped. It kept going for almost a minute after, steady and patient, like something still turning in an empty drum somewhere, in the dark, waiting for me to come and lift the lid. It wasn't the sound of an unbalanced load. It was a pulse, steady, wet, and coming from directly beneath the floorboards of the washer. I've been driving long haul for 11 years. I'm 34, no wife anymore, no kids I see regularly. My life fits in a sleeper cab, a wool blanket, a cooler, a phone mount, a small fan that clips to the bunk rail. I know the weight of everything I own. I know the smell of my cab at 2 in the morning, diesel and old coffee, and the faint sweetness of a pine air freshener that stopped working months ago, but I keep it there anyway. Boise was a stopover. I had a delivery to make the next morning, industrial parts to a warehouse east of town, and I needed 6 hours of sleep before I could legally drive again. I parked in the lot of a 24-hour laundromat on a side street near the rail yard. I'd stopped there before, twice maybe. The owner didn't care. There was a diner 2 blocks down and a gas station across the road, both open all night. Lights from both of them painted the inside of my cab in a pale orange smear. I knew the sounds of that intersection, a traffic signal that clicked, a loose grate in the road that rattled whenever a car rolled over it, the low hum of the laundromat's ventilation fan pushing warm, damp air through a vent above the side door. I ate a sandwich from my cooler. I checked the delivery manifest on my phone. I set an alarm for 5:30. I pulled the wool blanket up to my chest, turned the small fan toward my face, and closed my eyes. This is what ordinary looks like. This is what safe feels like. I want you to understand that, because I want you to understand what it felt like when it stopped. I woke up before the alarm. I don't know what woke me. Sometimes that happens on the road. Your body just surfaces, checks the dark, decides everything is fine, and pulls you back under. I lay still for a moment, looking at the orange light on the ceiling of my cab. Then I heard it. A slow, steady thumping from inside the laundromat. Not the sound of clothes tumbling, not the irregular slosh and spin of a normal wash cycle. This was even, deliberate. A single beat, then a pause, then a beat. Like a metronome set very slow. I told myself it was a machine running an empty cycle, some automatic self-clean program. I'd heard stranger things in parking lots. I pulled the blanket tighter. But the rhythm didn't change. Most machines speed up, slow down, shift gears. This one held its pace like it was counting something. I found myself counting with it without meaning to. 1. Pause. 2. Pause. 3. I turned onto my side. I looked at my phone. 3:14 a.m. The thumping continued. After a few minutes, I noticed something else. A smell in the cab that hadn't been there before. Faint, damp. Not the warm detergent smell from the vent. Colder than that. Like the inside of a basement or dirt after heavy rain. It came and went. I checked the windows. Both cracked about an inch. Nothing unusual outside. The diner, the gas station, the empty road. I closed the windows and the smell faded. I told myself the lot had poor drainage. I told myself I was tired. I almost believed it. I must have slept again because something woke me a second time. The thumping was louder. Not dramatically louder, just enough louder that I noticed, like whatever was making the sound had moved closer to the wall nearest my cab. I was parked maybe 15 feet from the laundromat's side door, right under the ventilation vent. I sat up and looked through the windshield. The laundromat's front windows glowed fluorescent white, and I could see the row of washers along the front wall. All of them were running. At 3 in the morning. I counted 8 machines, all 8 drums spinning. No one inside that I could see. I got out of the cab. The air outside was cold and damp, my boots on the wet asphalt. The ventilation fan above the side door pushed warm air across my face, and the smell hit me again. That cold dirt smell mixed with detergent until my stomach turned a little. The side door was unlocked. Inside, the sound was everywhere. Every machine running, every drum turning slow. One thump when the drum wall came around. A pause. Another thump. I walked the left row and looked through each porthole window. Empty. Just the drum turning. I walked the right row. Empty. 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 I stopped at the last machine on the right, the one closest to the back wall. Its drum wasn't turning. It was shaking. Just sitting there, vibrating in place, and the thumping from it was slower than the others, more deliberate. I stood in front of it for a long moment. The fluorescent light hummed above me. The other machines turned and thumped in their even rhythm. This one just shook. I pressed my hand flat against the porthole glass. The glass was warm. Not machine warm, not the heat of a motor or a heating element. Warm, the way skin is warm, the way a palm pressed against something for a long time is warm. I pulled my hand back. The thumping from inside shifted. It had been slow and steady. Now it came in a pattern. 3 quick beats, a pause, then 3 again. I knew that pattern. You know that pattern. It's what you make when you're trying to get someone to hear you. My heart was going very fast. My hands were cold. I stepped back and looked at the machine, really looked at it, the way you look at something when your brain is trying to catch up to what your body already knows. The porthole was maybe 10 inches across. I told myself nothing significant could fit in there. I told myself I was half asleep in a parking lot and my brain was making fear out of nothing. But the thumping came again. 3 beats, pause, 3. I called 911. I told the dispatcher what I was hearing. My voice was steady, which surprised me.
I gave the address from the sign above the front door. She said units were on the way. She asked me to stay on the line. I stood with the phone to my ear and watched the machine. The 3-beat pattern stopped. The shaking slowed. The warmth was still there. I could feel it from 2 feet away, faint as a window on a sunny day. Then the officers came in and it was gone. All of it. The warmth, the shaking, the rhythm from the other machines, stilled like something had heard the door open. The officers were polite. They checked every machine, the back room, the utility closet. One of them put his hand on the porthole of the machine at the end of the row and looked at me. "This one's off," he said. "Not running at all." He asked if I'd been drinking. I said no. They left a little before 4. I sat in my cab with the windows up and my phone on my chest. I did not sleep again. I watched the laundromat's windows until the sky went gray. Nothing moved inside. The machines were dark and still. At 5:30, my alarm went off. I drove the delivery. I went home. I told myself it was done. 3 weeks later, I was back in Boise. Different delivery, same route. I didn't plan to stop at the laundromat. I planned to pull into a truck stop on the highway. But I was tired, and I told myself it didn't mean anything, that I was just parking where I knew the lot was flat and quiet. At 3:14 a.m., I opened my eyes. The thumping was already going. Coming from the wall closest to my cab, my chest was tight, my hands cold, my breathing shallow. I did not get out this time, but after a few minutes I noticed it was different. The thumping was coming below the parking lot, not just from inside the building. It rose through the asphalt and through the cab's frame and through the mattress of my bunk. I turned on my phone's flashlight and looked out the window at the asphalt. At the base of the laundromat's wall, where the wall met the ground, there was a crack. It might have been there before, I couldn't be sure, but there was something in it, a dark stain spreading outward in a thin line, wet, recent. I pressed the phone against the glass and the light showed it clearly. The stain smelled like cold dirt. I could smell it even through the closed window. I called the non-emergency line. I described the crack and the stain. A different officer came this time. He crouched by the wall and shone his light along it for a long time without saying anything. Then he stood and said it was probably groundwater. He said there were old steam pipes under this part of the street from when the rail yard ran a boiler system decades ago. They sometimes caused vibrations. He was looking at the crack when he said it, not at me. I asked directly, had anyone looked under the lot? Had anyone checked the ground? He said there was no reason to dig up a parking lot based on a vibration complaint. He left. The thumping continued for another hour and then stopped. The stain was gone by morning. I left before full light. That was 4 months ago. I don't park at that laundromat anymore. I don't park near laundromats at all. At truck stops, I choose spots far from any building with vents or mechanical noise. I sleep with both windows closed, even in summer. I keep my phone at 100% before I lie down. I check the charge twice. When I got home after that second night, I looked up the address, property records, old news, anything I could find. There was a short article in a local paper from 8 years back. A development project on that block had been abandoned when the company folded, it said. Ground had been broken and then work stopped. The land sat for 3 years before the laundromat was built. There was no follow-up piece. I don't know what was under that parking lot. I don't know what was in that machine. I don't know what made the glass warm or what kept the 3-beat pattern going in the dark. I know the rhythm. I know it was patient in a way I don't want to think about. Something keeping its own count under the ground, under the concrete, under the hum of machines that had no reason to run. Last week, I was parked at a rest stop in eastern Oregon. Different state, different road. I was almost asleep when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered it because dispatch sometimes calls from numbers I don't have saved. No voice, just a sound. 3 beats, a pause,
3 beats. And under it, very faint, the low hum of a machine running in a room with no one in it. I'm still holding the phone,